Hey, welcome back. My name is Kristen, and I wanted to do something different this time, so you're going to be listening to me read to you some horror stories from Reddit while I learn how to play Bubba. The well behind the house. Each year we visit our grandmother to spend our summer vacations with. Our grandmother lives in an old but spacious and open bungalow with a courtyard and a veranda in the outskirts of the city close to the countryside. Our grandmother is an old woman with a wrinkled face and saggy skin. But irrespective of that, her soft smile and soothing words were always inviting and comforting. She always goes out of her way to make my brother and I feel like home. Days at our grandmother's house are usually marked by prayers in the morning, siestas in the afternoon, park time during the evening, and finally her captivating tales of gods, goddesses, demons, and ghosts before bedtime, all woven together by our scrumptious meals and retro music on the radio. A few meters behind the house lay an old well. Vines crawled across its crumbling rim. The ground around it was damp, scattered with fallen leaves and patches of moss and algae. The well had been abandoned decades ago, as it laid on disputed land, but the rope still hung there, frayed and blackened with age. Our grandmother had strictly warned us never to go near the well, especially at night, as it was deep and once you fell in, nobody on the surface could hear your screams and wails. But the story we got from our park buddies told us otherwise. They told us that the well was haunted by a Dayan, demonic entity who consumes and drains the blood of children. While my brother laughed, saying that ghost stories like that was common in the countryside, I couldn't shake the chill that crept down my spine. The following night, our grandmother tucked us into bed and narrated us stories about Krishna, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and the mischievous tales of his childhood. After that, she kissed us goodnight and went to her own room to sleep. But I couldn't sleep. The thought of the well being haunted by a child-eating spirit made my blood run cold and made me too paralyzed to even move. "You're such a scaredy cat, can't even sleep because of a dumb countryside lore," said my brother, who was playing games on his phone under the covers. "I'm not," I said, pulling up the covers to my chin. "Oh, really?" Now, he sat back up in bed, facing me directly. "If that's the case, then why don't you go down the well and pick up a stone and bring it back up here?" "I bet you can't do it. Because you're a coward. A wimp and always will be," said my brother, and he shoved me hard enough to make me fall off the bed. "I'm not a coward," I said, fighting the tears threatening to fall down my face, as I used my hands to thrust myself upwards and stand. "And I'll do it," I said, almost instantly regretting the words that came out of my mouth. Blinded by the urge to prove my brother wrong, I did not realize what I had signed up for. Walking to the well in the dead of night was no joke, especially for somebody like me who was too afraid to even go out alone in the dark. But I had to do it. I took a torch from one of the drawers, wore my flip-flops, and slowly crept out of the room, trying not to make much noise. As I reached the courtyard, I could see the well, its dark silhouette rising from the earth like a beast laying in the darkness and waiting for prey. I went towards the gate and held the handle in my hand. At that moment, every ounce of my being screamed and begged me to go to bed and pretend like this never happened, but I was determined to prove my brother wrong, so I pried the handle open and started walking towards the well. The night was unwaveringly quiet. Even the crickets were silent, and the only sound that could be heard was that of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. After walking for a few more minutes, the ground beneath my feet became damp. As I finally reached the well, I stood at the edge, peering into the well. The absolute darkness of the well swallowed the weak beam of my torch like it didn't exist. I felt almost relieved. Grandmother was right. The well was just deep. There's no Dan. As I bent down, reaching for a small rock around the edge of the well, the air around me suddenly grew colder. That's when I heard a faint sound. I quickly retreated and turned around, the torch trembling in my hands and my breathing getting heavy. I looked around, but there was no one in the courtyard. The only sound audible was that of my ragged breathing, loud in the silence. That's when I heard it again. I spun around to directly face the well. To my horror, I saw a thin, pale hand with nails as long as claws emerging out of the well. My torch fell to the ground as my heart leapt into my throat. I tried to scream, to run, to hide, but my body failed to cooperate. I was absolutely paralyzed with fear. The pale hand slowly made its way around my arm, sticking its grotesque claws into my skin. I hissed. The pain was excruciating, but enough to bring me back from my state of inertia. My legs finally obeyed my panic and ran. I bolted towards the house, my heart screaming and my heart hammering. As I finally reached the house, I saw that the arm was covered in blood, and one of my flip-flops was missing along with the torch. As I reached my room, I saw my brother dozed off. He would never believe me anyway. And I couldn't tell my grandmother either. She had strictly forbidden us from going to the well. Still shaken, I went to the washroom, dressed my wound, and discarded the bloody t-shirt. As I came out of the bathroom, I saw my grandmother standing in the hallway, her face half lit by the dim yellow bulb. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice calm, almost too calm. "I thought I heard something," I said, trying to hide the unease and fear laced in my voice. She suddenly leaned forward and grabbed my arm. I yelped, trying to free myself from her unnaturally strong grip, but she looked at me dead in the eye. "You shouldn't go near the well," she whispered. "It's not safe there." I freed myself from her grip and stumbled backwards, still clutching onto my arm. I looked up, only to see her smiling. "Go to sleep, you look tired," she said, while making her way back to her own room. I nodded and scurried back to my room, buried myself under the covers, and attempted to get some sleep after the horrors I had seen. Morning came too slowly. When I finally gathered the courage to face my grandmother, she was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, the knife moving flawlessly in her hand as she cut the carrots, capsicums, and potatoes. That's when I saw it. Under the long yellow nails. Dried blood. Not the brown one, dried with age. This was red. Fresh. She looked up at me with the same soft and gentle smile. "What's wrong, child?" she asked, but her smile wasn't the same again. Behind it lied something dark, something sinister. I said nothing. I stood there as the truth made my stomach churn and made my hands and feet go numb. That Diane wasn't in the well. She was in the house. Timmy hates the dark. Do you know that feeling when you're alone late at night? That shiver down your spine, the one that tells you you're not really alone, that something is watching? I'm sure you do. I know I do. And I know Timmy did too. Late last night, Timmy got home from work, exhausted. He threw open his door, expecting the warm glow of his lamp to greet him. Since I've known him, he's always had left a light on. The overhead bulb had blown yesterday, so the lamp was its replacement. Timmy feared the dark, or what might be hiding in it. His apartment was small, a cramped living room and kitchen, a boxy shower room, and a bedroom barely big enough for his bed. But it was his, and he'd worked hard for it. Timmy lived alone. Peaceful nights were normal for him. Lately, he'd been too tired to cook, crashing on the sofa instead. Tonight, overtime had pushed him later than usual. When he had finally gotten home, the usual glow was gone. His lamp had died while he was out. The moon was bright enough to light the sofa, and Timmy was tired. He kicked off his shoes, grabbed a blanket, and collapsed. For the first time I've known, he fell asleep in near darkness. 10 minutes later, a sound woke him. Not loud, but constant. Creaking. Shuffling. Timmy's eyes darted to the kitchen. Shadows danced in the corners. He froze. You could tell he was scared. The moonlight had dimmed, and he wasn't used to waking in the dark. Slowly, he got up and moved towards the bedroom door. He wanted light and knew where to find it. He reached inside, feeling for the switch, as if his life depended on it. Click. Nothing. He froze. Confused, scared, or both, I couldn't tell. The noise grew louder, closer. Timmy bolted into the bathroom, fumbling in panic, searching for the pull cord. Then, Silence. He hesitated, breathing heavy. His hands brushed the cord. He yanked it hard. Light flooded the room, almost blinding. His eyes met the mirror. His own reflection stared back, almost making him jump. He sighed, beginning to relax. The light spilled into the living room, once swallowed in darkness. He lingered at the doorway, scanning for movement. Nothing. Then came the sound again. Creaking. Shuffling. He turned toward the faintly lit bedroom. The door wasn't just ajar anymore. It was wide open. That's when the game was up. He knew I was here. He could see me now. Timmy hated the dark. I made sure it was the last thing he ever saw.